Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the MP for Romford, Reform UK's Andrew Rossendale.
Good evening, Romford. Good evening, everyone. Wherever you've come from, welcome to my constituency here in Romford. Friends, neighbours, good people of Romford and Essex. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here tonight. Despite what at times feels like hopelessness in British politics today, I want to say thank you. Thank you for believing that there is still something to fight for. Because I believe that Britain is worth fighting for. And it is only Reform UK that is truly fighting for Britain. Indeed, it is out of love of this great British nation that took me into politics over 4 decades ago in Romford. And throughout those years, I have never stopped standing up for Britain, our British way of life, defending British traditions, and always flying the flag for our country. And I have represented Romford, my hometown, for 25 years as its Member of Parliament and 12 years as a local Havering councillor. I was born in Rush Green, Romford. I was christened at St Edward's Church in Romford. I was educated at Rise Park and Marshall's Park schools in Romford. And I have fought 11 different elections in Romford over the last 35 years. I have indeed walked these streets, knocked on your doors, and listened to the hopes and frustrations and the fears of decent, hard-working, patriotic people who ask for very little, only fairness, security, and a country they still recognise. And so these simple wishes I have conveyed time and time again to those who have been given the trust to govern our country. But time and time again, I have been ignored. You have been ignored. We have all been ignored. So what happened last month was not simply a matter of me leaving the party that I'd been a member of for so long. It was the realization that long ago, my party left me, along with millions of British voters who were let down and betrayed by those who claimed to be putting our country first, but when in office, failed to do so over and over again. And it was hard. I must admit, it was hard to leave the party I'd been a member of for so long. Because I joined the Conservative Party at the age of 14. I, like so many of you, were inspired by Margaret Thatcher. Now, Mrs. Thatcher was a Prime Minister who never let our country down and always stood firm for Britain. And for the British people. Yet, I have to say, if I was 14 today, and I had the choice of Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenhop, or Nigel Farage, I would be in the crowd with you this evening. So, I first met Nigel 25 years ago, can you believe, when he came to see me at the House of Commons. I was a new MP. And so what did we discuss? Not a difficult one to work out. Well, of course, we discussed the fight against EU federalism. Of course. I was a new MP and Nigel was a new member of the European Parliament. But we hit it off from the start. We agreed on pretty much everything. Well, we did, on everything. And our friendship has endured ever since. He's a good man. He's a good man. And it was clear to me then that we belonged in the same party. And I always knew that in my heart, one day we would. And guess what? It's now happened. We are in the same party. Reform UK. Well, now it has been, I believe, the best decision I have ever made. And I also know that Nigel would one day be back in the House of Commons, but this time as a Member of Parliament. Well, Nigel, you took your time, but I'm so glad that you did. And now, as leader of Reform UK, you've already taken on one great responsibility. But there's one more job this country needs you to do. Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And for the sake of our country, the sooner you walk through the door of number 10, the better. Now, seeing so many of my friends and constituents here today in the town and borough that I have called home for my entire life, to me, this is the greatest privilege of all. However, I remember Romford how it used to be. I remember a town that was confident, orderly, safe, clean, patriotic, and proud of its Essex roots. A place where people worked hard, raised families, bought their own homes, and believed rightly that if you played by the rules and respected the local community where you lived, Britain would play fair by you. Romford was built by entrepreneurs, market traders, shopkeepers, and by families who moved out of the East End in search of a better life. People who believed in private ownership, ownership of your home, ownership of your business, ownership of your community. Like my own parents, the people of Romford were those who set their alarms early, went out to work, took responsibility for their families, and put something aside for a rainy day. Now, Margaret Thatcher understood this, and Romford returned that support for her at every single election. But unlike today, council houses were not meant to trap people in dependency. They became the first rung on the ladder, a stake in society, a foundation for aspiration. And many in Romford climbed that ladder and today are all the better because of it. But despite all the misery we see around today in Starmer's socialist Britain, Romford stands out. We remain resilient. Our people remain decent. And we remain firmly proud to call ourselves English and loyal to king and country. But ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us all to be honest with ourselves. The England we grew up in has been receding, not disappearing overnight, but eroded year by year, decision by decision, government after government. Romford increasingly feels like an island of common sense, where the old values of traditional England remain alive. But it is time that the political class woke up to the reality that, sadly, Britain is broken. And you know, the tragedy of this is that it hasn't happened by accident. Certainly not by bad luck, but tragically by design. After 1997, our country was deliberately rewired, starting under Tony Blair. Oh yes, Tony Blair. And shamefully continued by the Conservatives, who forgot what they were supposed to conserve. Government after government gave away the power invested in them by you, the electorate, and dismantled the foundations that made Britain unique. That Parliament is sovereign, and that Parliament answers to you, the people alone. Instead, power was siphoned away to quangos no one voted for, to courts with no democratic mandate, to international bodies that do not share our history, our traditions, or our British interests. But fortunately, in the year 2016, 10 years ago, thanks to patriotic people like all of you in this hall this evening, and to the 70% of Havering's residents who voted to leave the European Union, we began the long overdue task of reclaiming our sovereignty and loosening the chains that had been draining power away from this country for so long. But despite the overwhelming mandate of the British people, even Brexit was sabotaged. I'm sad to say that the Conservative Party, even though they were elected with an 80-seat majority and a mandate that I campaigned for, and one made possible because Nigel honourably stood aside his Brexit Party candidates in seat after seat across the country, including in Romford, to give Boris the majority to, as we were led to believe, get Brexit done. That government had a once-in-a-generation opportunity to deregulate, to tear up the bureaucratic straitjacket imposed by Brussels, and to restore self-government to this United Kingdom. But instead, so much of it remained intact. Worse still, in the process, we abandoned our own people in Northern Ireland, British citizens shamefully left behind with a border placed in the Irish Sea, and the integrity of our United Kingdom compromised. Brexit, I'm sorry to say, is not yet complete. There's a job to be done. and Nigel will do it. However, ladies and gentlemen, the European Union is only one piece of that puzzle. Today, we have an unaccountable Bank of England setting economic policy, an unaccountable Supreme Court ruling against elected governments, an unaccountable ECHR dictating to us who we must admit to our own country and who we cannot deport, an unaccountable Climate Change Committee imposing an energy policy which is making us colder and poorer, and an unaccountable OBR constraining budgets before MPs can actually vote on them, and over 300 more unaccountable quangos issuing instructions while ministers spend their time rubber stamping. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. Britain needs change. And change, ladies and gentlemen, is most certainly coming. And all of this marred by a culture of so-called diversity, equality, and inclusion, which is undermining the meritocratic spirit of the British people. And I'm sad to say that through this process of constitutional vandalism, ushered in by Tony Blair and disgracefully continued by the Conservatives in government, Britain is no longer the democracy we have always believed in and pride ourselves to be. Successive governments have sold us out to a managerial class of bureaucrats who have a disdain for the voter. And when the British people object, they are ignored, overridden, and told they didn't understand the question put before them. It is for this reason, ladies and gentlemen, why trust, I believe, in governments have collapsed across our island nation. It is for this reason why governments elected on a mandate for change in recent years have always failed. And ultimately, this is why Britain is broken. And nowhere is that failure clearly defined than in Havering, my borough. Ladies and gentlemen, and I know you're not all here from Romford this evening, but the truth is that if you are from Havering and if you are from Romford, you will know that in your heart, Romford is Essex. It's Essex. Sorry, we're not East London, we are Essex. Our culture, our geography, and our history determines that. Yet decisions affecting your streets, your transport, your policing, your housing are decided miles away by a Greater London authority that neither understands our community nor represents the people of this area. And since the turn of the millennium, we have sent hundreds of millions of pounds to the Mayor of London for services we barely receive. And what do we get in return? Well, not much. Police stations closed, fewer officers on our streets, crime rising while law-abiding residents are left to fend for themselves. The hated ULEZ tax, which has been imposed on us, despite consultation after consultation showing overwhelming opposition. We have seen the overdevelopment forced on our town centres, high-density blocks being built, designed not to improve Romford, but effectively to Londonise our town and country borough against the will of local people. And yet, time and again, the people of Romford and of Essex have voted against this out-of-touch mayor and everything he represents. Frankly, like most of you, I have had enough. And I know that every single one of you have had enough of Sadiq Khan. We really have. He's got to go. Absolutely got to go, that man. But, you know, devolution was sold to us as empowerment. Power going back to local people. Well, that hasn't happened. In our case, all of it is a money-making scheme, I'm afraid, to fund Inner London. You pay more, you get less, and you are told to be grateful. Well, I hope tonight that we can send a message to Mr. Khan. Romford does not need lectures from City Hall, and especially not from Sir Sadiq. Havering needs local control, local accountability, and local pride restored. That's why in 2028, 2 years' time, we need a Mayor of London who will stand up for boroughs like Havering and boroughs across the Greater London area and smash Khan's centralised bureaucracy in City Hall. So, we must all get behind Layla Cunningham and kick Khan out. Kick him out. Or as my old friend Norman Tebbit would say, on your bike, Khan. But, ladies and gentlemen, to change Havering's status within Greater London and restoring our independence from City Hall will require legislation. So the next Reform UK government under Prime Minister Nigel Farage, I can't wait for that day, can't wait for it. Can I say it again? Under Prime Minister Nigel Farage. Will give Havering a choice to break free of the Mayor of London and become a self-governing unitary authority once again, just as we were after the abolition of the GLC before Tony Blair imposed the GLA and Mayor upon us. So Havering will get back control over the development of our town centre. We will rid ourselves of ULEZ, which has been dividing up families and communities. And most importantly, it will ensure that policies decided for the people of this borough in Havering are made by the people of Havering. No more dictatorship from Mayor or the Mayor of London or City Hall. Power will be restored to our community. Havering would pay only for the services we actually receive, such as the Freedom Travel Pass for pensioners, which I want to see extended across the entire TfL region for all boroughs that contribute to it, as Havering always has. So don't let anyone tell you that the Freedom Pass is at risk. With Reform UK, the Freedom Travel Pass for our pensioners is safe. So, Havering's future will once again be in the hands of the people of Havering. And finally, our borough can take its rightful place as fully part of the County of Essex, rejoining our neighbouring towns like Brentwood, Epping, Chigwell, Basildon and Southend and Chelmsford and Clacton. With the flag of Essex once again proudly raised above our town hall in Romford. And so, on a local level, we have been ignored, but on a national level, we are being ignored too. And one of the clearest and most rampant examples is that of illegal immigration. This country has prided itself on being a fortress, a nation which has resisted invasion since 1066. Yet now, our politicians have completely lost control of our borders. Our country, which cannot protect its borders, any country that cannot protect its borders, is not a country in any meaningful sense. If we are serious, there is only one course of action. We must repeal the Human Rights Act. We must leave the European Convention on Human Rights. And restore to our Parliament the authority to act in the national interest. And once that authority is restored, we must begin the process of mass deportation for every individual who has entered this country illegally. The message must be sent out far and wide that if you break into Fortress Britain illegally, you will not be allowed to stay. This country was never meant to be borderless, yet over the course of this century, the United Kingdom has been transformed almost beyond recognition, not because the British people voted for it, on the contrary, because their wishes were ignored by successive governments. At election after election, the public voted for lower immigration. Yet, after each and every election, governments of all colours did the opposite. Immigration numbers have risen without control, rising to levels never seen before. The astonishing thing is, despite me and others, like Robert Jenrick and Suella Braverman, speaking frankly to former colleagues that they must abandon their forlorn attempt to defend their record in government on immigration, I have to say, the same people responsible for allowing this extreme demographic change to our nation continue to defend the indefensible. There is now a need for radical action, because legal migration, certainly at its current scale, is not sustainable. And contrary to what the Treasury might tell us, it is making us all poorer. It is totally unfair to those who play by the rules, unfair to those who pay into the system as they have done their entire lives, and deeply unfair to communities like Romford, who are told to absorb relentless change without consent. And disgracefully, we are all paying the dividends for this, whether that's Islamic fundamentalist terror attacks on the streets of this country, or the greatest scandal in modern British history, the grooming gang scandal. None of this was inevitable. None of it was unavoidable. It was the result of political choices. Just look at Hungary. Just look at Poland. Different choices, different outcomes. And my friends, Britain never voted for this, and the people of Romford certainly didn't vote for this. A government that cannot decide who comes in and who must leave has surrendered the most basic responsibility of the state. Reform UK understands this. Reform UK is not afraid to say it as it is. And my friends, Reform UK is our last chance to fix it. And we must. And we must, and we will. But this rotten Labour government, well, they won't fix anything. On the contrary, Starmer's government represents a Britain in retreat, humiliating our country for the whole world to see. So when His Majesty's government surrenders sovereign British territory while paying billions of pounds of taxpayers' money for the privilege of doing so, as it is attempting to do with the surrender of the Chagos Islands, whilst at the same time denying the British Sagossian people the right of self-determination, it is clear to us all that we have a government and a Prime Minister who is not on the side of the British people. I'm afraid it's true that our political class has accepted a doctrine of managed decline for our country. The idea that Britain should shrink its ambitions, outsource its influence, and apologise for its past. I reject that entirely. I do. I'm proud of this country. I'm proud of our history. I'm proud of the British people. And I reject this defeatism from this Labour government. And we will fight back. And we will stop them allowing our country to decline ever further. And so will Nigel Farage. And so will Reform UK when we are in government. We all belong to a nation which, only a century ago, had built the largest empire in history. A nation which exported its language, culture, traditions, institutions, Christian values, and ideals to the far reaches of the earth. But post-Brexit, Britain had a simple choice: either to chart a confident, independent course or to drift back into the orbit of a federalising European Union. This government is choosing Brussels. And meanwhile, the United States is resurgent. China has the globe in an economic stranglehold, and the EU is declining, whilst foolishly continuing to centralise power over the nation-states and their citizens. Britain simply cannot afford to be squeezed between these two competing powers. We must look to our natural allies in the English-speaking world, to our family of nations who share our language, our legal traditions, our institutions, and most importantly of all, our head of state. And beyond that, we should rediscover the strength of the Commonwealth. 56 nations linked by shared history and free association. That is real soft power. The quiet influence born of our proud history, built by our forebears, and one we have barely begun to harness because of the deep-seated embarrassment by the establishment, and in particular, the Foreign Office. What I want is for Britain to be confident again, for the Union Jack to be a symbol that people around the world recognise as one that represents freedom, prosperity, and a force for good. Britain has always been a great nation, but the political class who govern us today have failed our nation. So today, Britain urgently needs leadership with the courage and determination to end the decline, restore our confidence and make Britain greater still. And that leader, ladies and gentlemen, is Nigel Farage. Friends, I didn't come to the decision to leave a party that I had been a member of for 45 years easily. But I could not stand on your doorsteps anymore defending the indefensible. I could not ask the people of Romford to trust a system that no longer listens to them. And I could not stay silent while the country I love is broken. Reform UK has diagnosed the problem, and Reform UK will prescribe the solution. And ultimately, Reform UK understands something Westminster has long forgotten. This country belongs to its people, not the bureaucrats, not the politicians, not the civil servants, but the people of this country. So they're going to find out soon enough. The power to free Havering from Sadiq Khan and City Hall is in your hands. The power to keep more of the money you earn is in your hands. The power to secure our borders and end the era of relentless change without consent is in your hands. The power to put Britain back on the map as a proud, sovereign, free and independent nation once again is in your hands. Use it. Vote Reform UK. Britain is broken, but it will not be fixed by those who broke it. Our country, our cherished United Kingdom, Britain needs a fresh start with a new political force that truly believes in our nation, and a Prime Minister who will not be afraid to demonstrate the British bulldog spirit and take our nation forward. Britain needs Nigel Farage. Britain and Romford needs Reform UK. Thank you. Thank you very much.